Hello, everybody. Welcome to the On Call Coaches Podcast, where we dive deep into the world of amateur player development, private skills coaching, and video training. I'm your host, Coach Switz.
And I'm Coach Zane.
How are we doing today, Coach Zane?
Awesome. How are you, buddy?
Pretty good. Good weekend. How was your weekend?
It was a good weekend. My dad came into town from Kansas City, so you got to see the girls play. And,
how'd they play?
They played well.
Show out for them?
Oh, yeah. Both are playing well right now. So
how many goals?
Truman
family, how many? Come on.
Couple for each of them. So, yeah,
right.
no, it was a good showing and great to catch up with him and, with everything he's done with hockey in the St. Louis community over the years. So it was great to have him also run into everybody at the rink that knows.
Second mayor of St. Louis. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
So
you don't know if you go to the rink with Zane, you're going to be there a while.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to talk to him.
Yeah. So.
Question today I want to talk about, Coach. How do we utilize other sports to cross-train in our main sport? Flows with our guest today. He's a different one. He's a jiu-jitsu as well as a personal trainer. So we want to talk that. Tell me a little bit about what you think. How do you use it?
Oh, I think cross-training, one, just so that you're not specialized in the sport, especially at a young age. That's a big mistake that I see because, how many players do we see that they get to 12, 13, 14 years old in hockey and say, guess what, I don't want to do anymore.
Yeah, right.
And now you're stuck. So being able to progress as an athlete playing other sports and when that sport also complements whatever your favorite sport is, that's awesome.
Yeah.
For me, that was karate, and I got into that for the balance side of it, the discipline side of it, core strength, flexibility, you name it. It was very.
You have a little bit there.
It transferred to both sports. But if we can build a complete athlete by using other sports, it doesn't matter what sport you play, then you can fall in and play that sport.
Do you see that those sports come into the way you play your main sport? So, like when you play like a basketball, do you run more basketball play? You know what I mean? Does that mix into your routes and things like that? Do you find?
Sure. Going back to my dad always talked about that basketball is played so much like hockey. It's 5-on-5. It's zone defenses or man-to-man defenses. You have all these different schemes. The only difference is shooting at a hoop versus a goal. But at the end of the day, they're played very much the same. So, yeah, if you do play basketball and you play hockey, they're very comparable in the way that it's played. And obviously the athletic side of it and moving and building your body as you continue to play both sports. That one's a little bit more difficult because it's the same season. So a lot of complement sports, you have to find something, for hockey, we see a lot of lacrosse players. Now that was something when we were growing up that wasn't a big deal.
No.
Wasn't a big thing. But now we see a lot of those hockey players are playing lacrosse. Again, played very similar, same contact. They get the same physical side of it. Swimming is another big one for hockey players. So, as a summer sport, I swam growing up. And there's two people that I'm afraid of in life: wrestlers and swimmers. They're both complete body.
Pretty strong
athletes,
folks. Watch out.
Top to bottom, they work every muscle group. They are strong. They know how to use their body. They know how to use all the muscles together. That's another thing that swimming, karate, wrestling, all those jiu-jitsu, Blake talks about that, like using his full body and complement muscles. I forget the exact term that he used.
Leverage and stuff. Well, you learn that leverage when you're throwing. And
And you got to get your legs firing with your core, with your arms, all in the right timing, and that's no different than a hockey shot.
Yeah.
So working that timing, working those big muscle groups, working together really helps.
What do you think some of the best sports are to cross-train with, like on a general scale? So, like, whether you're a soccer player, hockey player, football player, what do you think? How do you cross-train? What some of the best ones for those? Or do you just have to pick the off-season sport?
Well, in some of them, you can do it not even as a season. You can cross-train. Like, if it's truly for cross-training, we've heard of plenty of hockey players that take boxing lessons or take dance lessons even.
Yeah, gymnastics.
They need quicker feet. Irish dancing is awesome.
Yeah.
And so
or your sprint coach.
Yeah.
Cross-country coach.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of different options out there to find something that you enjoy, that you can do, and will also help you in your sports. But
now, schedules are crazy enough. You're a high-level athlete. How do you manage that schedule when you throw in some more?
Again,
just ask for that.
That's the whole off-season thing. You got to find it when you're when your schedule is down for whatever sports you're playing and finding those other sports that can complement it.
Yeah, that was good like 7 years ago, but we don't have off seasons anymore, Coach. So how do you?
Yeah.
I'm being serious. Like,
Yeah.
So how do you build in? I think it goes to that off season plan. Is that something you have to put in? You got to schedule time out. Maybe not. There's so many spring hockey events or spring main sport events, and have some time for that other sport.
Well, I think it's changed from back in the day. Parents would just take your skates away during the summer, and you would go do whatever that other sport is. Yeah, swim. But we'll use that as an example. Now it's okay. I'm still on the ice once a week playing spring hockey or twice a week, but it's not 7 days a week.
Yeah.
So those are the times where you fill in the extra sports that can complement whatever your main sport is, and for other sports it's the same thing. We have our season where we are hard into that sport 5-7 days a week, focused on that sport. And then there's some downtime, and now it's not completely cut it off anymore. We don't do that, but we do reduce the level. I mean, even in the AAA program here in town, like during the spring season, you're going to play 1 or 2 quote unquote pickup games. Maybe a skills practice, but it's definitely not the same rigorous schedule that you're holding where you're traveling every weekend and everything else like that.
No, but in the past we had talked about, you also want to get your workouts and start doing all the other stuff. So, you know what I mean? It starts stacking up pretty quick, even though you're only on the ice 3 nights a week.
Well, and those workouts go for both sports.
Yeah. True.
So I can't say that workout's just a hockky workout. It's also
healthy.
It's just
good at health.
Yeah. And eating, I eat well. Like, and if you want to be a high level athlete, I don't care if you're a swimmer, karate, judo, jiu-jitsu, it doesn't matter. Just you need to put the right fuel in your body to perform. It's like saying sleep is part of hockey, where that's everything you do in life. You got to make sure you get enough sleep also.
Yeah. All right. Well, I like it. I want to get on to our guest we have this week. I think he's going to fit in great here. Another cross trainer. We can utilize him. We talk how we're going to bring him in the St. Louis hockey training family.
Yeah.
And send some people that way. Go ahead, hit that like, share, and subscribe button right there for us. We're going to head over to a quick 10-second commercial break, and we'll be right back. All right, I'm excited to welcome an incredible guest who brings over 2 decades of experience in competitive martial arts. Not only has he proven his skills on the mat with a recent silver at Missouri State Championships and a gold at the Branson Open, but he's now taken his talents into coaching both kids and adults. For the past 10 years, he's been a certified personal trainer. Perfect, strong as an ox, and a trained killer. Gotcha. Awesome. Watch out, Coach. Over the last 3 years, he's taken 20 years of he's had 20 years of competition experience and started sharing that experience as a jiu-jitsu coach, specializing in both group and private lessons. Whether it's self-defense, MMA, or sports-focused training, he's helping students of all ages develop under the jiu-jitsu umbrella. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited to welcome Mr. Blake Chatham. How we doing, Blake?
How are you guys?
Doing good. Doing good. Now, I saw online that did I get your wins right? Missouri State champ, and then our silver in Missouri.
Actually, you brought out the salty loss for me. That was kind of, I think that was back in February. I actually hadn't lost a match in, I don't know, a long, long time. And so that sort of has really spurred me on kind of a journey to really compete a lot this year. I've been competing every other month. And so, I've been really, really busy this year, aside from the business and the training and all that, with my own competitions.
Nice. Now, would you say, you said it was a salty loss. Now, was it a close loss and then it just lit that fire like you were so close to your goal and now we gotta go get it? Or what made it a salty loss?
Well, okay. So, I've been for a couple years wanting to kind of work my way to the World Championships for no-gi, which is for those that don't know, with jiu-jitsu, you have two different divisions. You've got a no-gi, okay, so you wear like a rash guard and shorts, and then you've got a gi, which is like more traditional martial arts.
Okay.
So I wanted to work my way to the World Championships the last couple years, but just this and that never really worked out. So I was like, all right, 2024 is going to make it happen. I kind of saw that there was a competition. I believe that was in February, and I was like, all right, I'll sign up for this one. And I went and just to no excuses. The kid came out, he worked. My cardio just was not up to snuff. It was a 10-minute match. As you get older in jiu-jitsu, once you get into 30, you're considered in the masters division. And then, but it's kind of harder at local competitions to find someone that's your age, because it's divided up in weight and then age and then your experience level.
Okay.
And so it's harder with all those that kind of filter down to get more competition at the higher level of local competitions. So I dropped down an age bracket, which meant it was, instead of like a 6-minute round, it's a 10-minute round. So I just gassed out. And I think I didn't even lose by points. I lost by an advantage, which means he put a submission on and I had to escape out of it. But I was just absolutely, my lungs were toast, fried, and I was like, they say you obviously you learn a lot more from your losses than you do from your wins. And that one lit a fire under me. Like I said, I hadn't lost in anything in like forever. So I've just been man on fire trying to get back into it this year.
What'd you change up the most about your training this year to get to that next level?
Definitely, the resistance training I do is always consistent week in and week out. But actually increasing my volume of jiu-jitsu training, specifically my sparring rounds, and then my outside cardio. And that's been an evolving process all year, trying different stuff, and then competing a lot, and then sort of gauging my gas tank. And that's the biggest thing. My lungs have just always not been great. I was diagnosed with asthma as a kid and all this stuff, but I don't like limitations and letting anything hold me back. So I just have the time to forget about it. But, if I'm going to get into deep water, it's usually because my cardio is not great. So I've just been picking it up, to the next level and then testing it out, at each competition and seeing how I feel.
Yeah, I love you brought up that you figure out what your weakness is and really focusing on that. And also, we've talked about it in past episodes with other guests, being honest with yourself and knowing what those limitations are and then attacking those.
Yeah.
That's sure.
Coach Dito was a big believer in that.
100%. And making sure that when you see that weakness, that we really focus on it. It's fun to work at what you're already good at, man. If you're a really good shooter in hockey, it's awesome. How many kids walk into our facility coach and they're like, I want to work on shots. I'm like, sweet. I watched you play last week. Shots are not your problem.
That is not the problem.
You do a lot of great shots. However, your footwork to get to that shot needs some work. Let's work on that. So, really
right. And I think that takes a lot of being honest with yourself and saying, hey, this is what I need to work on. This is where, and really, if you flip around and say, this is the room for the biggest self-improvement, right?
Biggest opportunity.
The most benefit, obviously.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that.
Now, it's I noticed you started training, I guess competing, and it looks like jiu-jitsu in your team. Is that right?
Yeah, so
walk me through your journey in martial arts.
Yeah, so back then in like the early 2000s, jiu-jitsu has become kind of much more widespread, ubiquitous in our society. I mean, in every metropolitan area, you can usually find a jiu-jitsu school, 3, 4, or 5 of them pretty close together. But back in the early 2000s, that really wasn't the case. And so I was just a young, guy in high school, and a local guy would travel 30 minutes away and go train at a place over in a more metropolitan area. And I would go there, kind of hitch a ride with him sometimes. And then at the local fitness, the gym that I worked out at, they had mats there. We'd pull them out. We'd go, I saw this on UFC. Let's try this. It was really, informal at the beginning, and got more formal as I was able to kind of, drive. And then once I got out of high school, that's when I kind of started doing more regular training in jiu-jitsu. And then after jiu-jitsu, for that first time, I went to mixed martial arts. I did amateur mixed martial arts from like age 20 to, I don't know, 22. And just looking back on it now, it's, young and dumb, right? Like I just wanted to go on the gate and do stuff.
Check it off the list.
Yeah, right. I mean, I was like, what's something, I watched UFC a lot when I was a kid. And so, like, I just knew I wanted to do that. And so I got my taste of that and did that. And then from there, I took a little bit of time off, probably 8 to 10 months. Went to judo because I just wanted something to kind of be able to belt up in. Made my way through that. I got the first degree brown belt in judo. And then I took my school move then, judo school. So then I finally came back to jiu-jitsu again. And I ripped all my stripes off. I was a 3-stripe white belt at the time previously, and then I ripped all them off and just started all over again.
Built from scratch?
Yeah, I mean, kind of. I just wanted to go through the process again, and it's a different school, different affiliation, so I really just wanted to, like you said, start from scratch and go from the ground up.
Yeah, build that foundation.
When you're doing competitions, how many is fights the right term for that? Matches? How many of those would you do in a weekend? And like, what's the spacing of those? So if somebody was looking at a schedule for jiu-jitsu, like, do you have to take months off in between, like a boxer? Is there any regulations on that? Like, is there some governing body that says you can only fight this much, or how does that
once
work?
a weekend?
Yeah, like what? How do they protect you as a fighter from not going
do
overboard?
as much as you want. The difference between boxing and things like that is that's a full contact striking martial art, right? So you're going to be taking blows to the head, whereas jiu-jitsu is all about all things grappling. So takedowns, joint locks, and the injury rate's pretty low. Despite it being a combat sport, because you know when you got caught,
Yeah.
joint locks and stuff, you tap out. So yeah, you can do it every weekend. I've got one planned for this weekend. If I get someone in my competition in my bracket for the following weekend, then I've got one then. And I've been doing one. It was every other month, and now it's come down to every month. So yeah, there's no overarching. And all these organizations are kind of local level, but none of them are really affiliated with each other. So there's no overarching organization.
Yeah, Missouri governing body of jiu-jitsu or anything like that.
Okay.
No, you mentioned earlier about having gi and no gi competitions. Did I hear that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
What's your specialty, and which one do you like better, and why?
Well, I don't like either of them better. I will say all year this year I competed in no gi because my goal was to do the World Championships, which is no gi, IBJJF, which you asked about governing body or big. That is the biggest jiu-jitsu organization. International Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Federation is what that stands for. And so my goal was to go to the no-gi World Championships at December. So this year I've just been competing in no-gi because that's what I plan on competing in the World Championships. And the reason, I think I've been doing that because I like the pace of it. It's faster pace. You can't hold on to someone with in the traditional uniform, the gi, they've got big lapel grips and stuff, and so things get slowed down. And so it's been fun to be able to kind of speed things up, and it's just been more fun for me probably overall.
Awesome. Yeah, I was going to ask the big difference there of gi versus no gi and how the competition works. And
is it more traditional wrestling?
Well, and just the grips, because back when I was competing in karate, everything was in a gi.
No big deal, black belt.
But being able to grab a hold of that, and I never did anything jiu-jitsu or judo. I went the boxing route, the karate route. But I can imagine being able to wrap your hand around that gi and really get a hold of it is a distinct advantage to where it's tight-fitting clothes where you can't get a hold of them.
Sure, it's different grips. So in the most basic of terms, what that would mean is, like with the gi, you're going to probably see more judo type of throws. But also with jiu-jitsu, very quite common. What you see in sport jiu-jitsu is people pulling guards. So they'll willingly grab somebody and then they'll drag them to the ground and they'll wrap legs around in some manner and try and control them that way. That's a lot of people's in jiu-jitsu we call it their game that they play. Like everybody has. Now, when you get to my division, it's ultra heavyweight. You see a lot more takedowns because nobody wants a big giant. So, I mean, you can, and it's anybody. There is no limit to the weight. They could be 400 pounds. Now, you don't really see that a whole lot, but it's much more. I think that's probably also the reason Nogi's been fun for me is because it's a little bit more wrestler based. You got a lot more like collar ties, grabbing necks, and stuff like that, and that's fun. Body locks, and I've been able to incorporate a lot of my judo into the Nogi as well. So I would say that if I had to put it just, very blunt, I would say that no-gi is more wrestling and a faster pace. Gi is kind of more, throws like judo style throws and a little bit slower, more methodical, just because with all the pants and the fabric, it's there's a lot more grip, so it slows the game down.
What would you say the biggest difference? Because I mean, I watch my MMA on UFC, but what's the big difference between judo and jiu-jitsu? How do you help me out here?
So, there's a lot of talk, and old school judo people is like jiu-jitsu is just it's just judo on the ground. We have all the same techniques, and to some degree, that's kind of true. Judo, another easy way to explain it, probably spends 70% of their technique standing up, throws maybe 30% if on the ground, which they call newaza work, and then jiu-jitsu is much more on the ground, flipping that 70% on the ground, and then 30% kind of doing stand-up techniques, and that's really also school contingent. Jiu-jitsu, when you say like martial arts schools, right? That's what you say for a jiu-jitsu school. Um, it depends on your instructor and their background and what they're interested in. If you've got somebody who is a collegiate wrestler who's a black belt, obviously they're going to focus a lot on the wrestling. If you've got someone who's much more, and I find this from the smaller divisions, much more guard focused, then they're going to do a lot more groundwork on the ground because they're used to having to fight on the ground against bigger people.
What made you want to switch back and forth and back and forth? Why did you eventually stick with jiu-jitsu opposed to that mid-switch to judo? Why do you like jiu-jitsu more than judo? I guess that's a real question.
Yeah, it's kind of just sort of life and circumstances, really. I mean, the MMA, I kind of did my thing in the MMA, and inherently, obviously, there's been more and more stuff coming out, CT and all that kind of stuff, and I was like, inherently, getting punched in the head is not great. And so that I got to a point in my career at that where I was like, all right, I either need to be serious and go to like a legit gym somewhere, which would mean I'd have to completely move away most likely, or, move on to the next thing. And then after that was judo. I used to go to a place called Kirkwood Judo Club, and that was ironically, it started off in Kirkwood, but at the time it was over in Brentwood. That ended up moving again. And so, and I just got to the point where that was too much of a drive. And so I was like, all right, I'll go back to jiu-jitsu because I just always I've had affinity and I've always loved some grappling in general. Even though I never wrestled in high school, but I just liked it. I just really enjoyed it. It's something that you can do. It's great cardio, something that you learn. It's always challenging your brain to try different moves and things, and physically challenging yourself to try different moves. And so I just ended up going to a place that was 5 minutes from my house. And at that time, it was just kind of as a hobby, something to do again.
Yeah.
Yeah. One last question on this from me. Are there different styles of jiu-jitsu? I always hear Brazilian tied to jiu-jitsu.
Sure.
So, is there a Russian?
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu?
Not to get into a super giant long history lesson, but essentially, there are different kind of styles. Traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu is sort of like it's the gentle art, ju and jitsu. Jitsu being art, ju being, and then that originally samurai. That was kind of like just you would have your family's name, and then I don't know, like say if I said Chatham Jiu-Jitsu, right, that would be my family style of jiu-jitsu. And that was over in Japan at the time. Okay, and so it made its way over into Brazil. Okay, um, and then the Gracie family, kind of took it and ran with it from there. The other solid, so that's the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Okay, and then there's different spellings of it. You'll see kind of Jiu-Jitsu like Jutsu. That is kind of more descended from like the traditional Japanese style, and that's more kind of like joint locks and things of that nature. But
See, I told you I spelled it right earlier, everybody.
that's the Brazilian style, right?
I don't think I was close to either.
Right. So yes, it is kind of confusing. It's almost kind of like how there's Kinpo karate, and then there's
That's what you were just saying.
Shotokan karate, and there's all these different styles, and they come from different places. So that is confusing, and that's martial arts in general. Different. There's Taekwondo, and then Muay Thai, and before that was Muay Boran. They always as time goes on, you have splintering off of different things.
Gotcha. Now I want to kind of shift gears and talk more into your training and your coaching now with the youth and the group sessions, and then your private lessons.
Yeah.
Let's talk about just start with the group lessons as a kid. I'll start from what I'm assuming is just most parents' perspective, maybe a mom's perspective, is why would I want to train my kid to be a fighter?
Well, I really don't focus on that. Generally speaking, I can kind of tell you how my curriculum is broken into. Monday and Tuesday, the first technique that first and foremost, we'll even back up a little bit more. We always start off with like a warm up. And then after that, we do something a little bit more dynamic of a warm up, and that might be skills based. That might be I have them play a game, like say I have them put an anklet on around their ankles, and then they're trying to kind of grab that ankle off of each other's legs. Something fun for kids to do, but at the same time, it's kind of teaching them how to shoot a single leg, grab that leg, that kind of thing. And then from there, we move into technique. And so, like Monday and Tuesday, I teach a self defense focus. And and it's when I say being you say being a fighter more so it's very jiu-jitsu being a softer martial art, not striking. We don't come at each other hands up like this, right? You see somebody doing this, what's that look like?
Yeah.
Boxer, right? We're much more open hand when we teach this, right? Hands out like this. We create a barrier, distance control focused. And so also from everybody else's perspective on the outside, somebody sees that and like, well, he didn't want any problems. He's got his hands turned out right there, right? But in reality, you're creating a distance and barrier, and then once you get your hands on that person, then they go down to the ground, and you can control them in that way. So that's like Monday and Tuesday, and then Wednesday and Thursday, we tend to focus a little bit more on sports training, sports jiu-jitsu training. And that way the kids are well-rounded. And that still has some transferable stuff over into both self-defense and sports stuff. They somewhat have some overlap. But, why would a parent want to? It's great exercise. I have them I do push them to work out and do tough stuff. They're doing bear crawls and stuff like that. Their body mechanics and stuff like that. We work a lot on controlling our bodies. Sometimes we toss in balance stuff. Sometimes, we try squat jumps, all kinds of different stuff. And then it gives kids confidence. They do spar every single class, and what I mean by sparring is jiu-jitsu rule sparring. So one of the reasons that jiu-jitsu is effective is the live training in it. And so that kid is trying to beat that other kid. They go one-on-one, and I give them a very specific set of things to do. So, for example, one kid is in mount, which is a position where you're on the other person's belly with your knees down, and you try and hold that kid down, and the kid on the bottom tries to get out. We call that positional training. And so I'll put a timer on the clock for 2 minutes, and the kid on the bottom is trying to get out and use the techniques that we've learned, usually for that day, to try and get out. Okay? So it's a fully resisting person on top. So I think ultimately it gives the kid confidence. It gets them, stronger. and then great exercise. And then a lot of the kids have friends in there that are just, the same kids start working with each other. They find friends just like in any sport. And then, that they become friends outside of it sometimes. So there's a lot of good reasons.
Sure. Yeah. You touched on it a little bit, but balance was really the reason I got into it, to supplement hockey. You're on one foot, for me it was kicking, punching, whatever, using the body mechanics, and it's the same athletic moves that you would use in other sports. So for me, it was a good supplement. Then I fell in love with it, and I loved karate, and I did it as its own thing. But my original one was, hey, this is something that's a great cross-training opportunity for whatever sport I'm doing. And then it just took off from there because I fell in love with it. So, balance was my big thing.
For sure.
Yeah. I think that transfer. We've had kids from all different sports. I mean, I try and humanize myself to the kids a little bit and ask them questions and that kind of stuff, like, oh, who's playing other sports and that kind of stuff, and not just be a stern instructor, but also I'm interested in what they do, and they come from soccer and softball and some in chess club and all kinds of different stuff. And to your point about it being transferable, I think jiu-jitsu, because I do a lot of stand-up with the kids, stand-up takedown. It's not only groundwork, and that is just great core work, balance, using your body in unison with each other, and what we call in training concurrent activation potentiation. So using your entire musculature to produce force as opposed to just your biceps or only one small muscle. So
Switz, how many times do we yell at a kid?
Yes,
squeeze your tummy.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, for when you're training the kids, like, what do you see? I'm trying to think, like, when you're working with a kid, what are the big differences that separate from like I don't know the belt structure. That's where I'm struggling here, from like a beginner belt to like a black belt. You know what I mean? Like, how do you see, like, what separates the kids that advance fast opposed to some of the ones that take a little more time to get through the stages?
So one thing I will say even about the belt system is kids have their own belt system until they get to the age of 16. So there's never going to be a jiu-jitsu black belt at like 5 years old.
Gotcha.
That's
It
keeps them hungry and something to chase until they get into the adult belt system at 16. Now, as far as what separates, it's honestly the exposure to the amount of techniques, right? The hours on the mat of sparring with other kids, and just as similar probably as in hockey, your ability to just feel things, right? And they call that kind of invisible jiu-jitsu, weight distribution, putting my foot here, flowing from one movement to the next movement. So not only having that knowledge of movements, but also the feel for the appropriate time to use those movements as well. So that's the biggest thing.
How do you find that feel?
What's that?
How do you teach that feel for somebody, or how did you learn that feel? When do you get that rhythm? Because I'm sure it seems like a lot of rhythm when I'm watching it on TV. You got to know when to roll and pull and go, and so it all works in unison. Otherwise, you kind of get blocked up there.
Yeah, that's kind of probably one of those things that's hard to you can't really teach it. Like, how do you, when people are learning how to skate, how do they tell when their weight's too much this way as opposed to that, and that kind of thing? Eventually you just do it so much, you just feel it. Right?
So you got to go through the reps to do it.
The vestibular system and all these different things are very good in adaptation. And essentially, all training is introducing stimulus and causing some type of adaptation of the body. So, the more stimulus, which means kids coming to class, they do, the more that they start to adapt to these, different things. In this case, feeling pressure, putting the right pressure here, I'm off balance there, I need to put more weight here, things of that nature. So all I can really do is introduce techniques to the kids, and then when they really start to feel it in the sparring, right? That's when they know, okay, I should have done this, and start to feel this. So it's almost something that's kind of in hand.
Gotcha. So you got to make that mistake before you kind of learn how to use it correctly.
Yeah, sometimes that's the best teacher.
Are you doing the adult training?
Yeah, I mean, I used to teach an adult class, but that was when I was actually kind of in a studio next to the school. But I've moved to a different place for my own business, but yeah, I do private lessons. Right now I have a guy doing private self-defense stuff, so we work everything from distance control, and sometimes he'll just come in with some random question for me. I'm like, all right, let's lab it and see, let's go from there.
Nice, nice. Now, with the self-defense class, do you find more male or females joining those classes? I'm curious because I think I might want
Well,
to take one.
yeah, so this one-on-one individual was male, but I have done entire women's self-defense classes as well. And obviously, since it's women's self-defense, they're women. But you know, I I've seen both, and then I've also had clients just do an hour of kickboxing, and so they kind of in a way are doing self-defense whether they know it or not. Like next thing you know, they know how to throw a four-piece combo out there, and like they could actually be fairly dangerous in a self-defense scenario, but they're just doing it for fun and for working out.
Mm-hmm.
Listeners, everybody just heard Coach Alex would like to take a class. I think we can make this work.
I'm
Guys,
down.
we
We were talking earlier. I was like, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. I don't see why I would want to take that class.
I'll get some video from that.
I'm good with it.
Yep,
I'm
yep.
good with it. Let's shift gears
All right,
now
sounds
and
good.
let's move to some personal training stuff. I mean, that blends kind of with what Coach Zane and I do in the hockey world. And, we were talking earlier. I want to kind of get something going with the three of us to where we can get a hockey program going over at the gym with you, and we can start working the hockey players in the right workouts to see if we can't set something up for our St. Louis hockey trainer customers
Yeah.
and move them out there. What do you see in that world? What are some good things that a hockey player can use at home or do at home to help their training?
So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Obviously, balance is great. It'd probably be easier to tell you what I do with my younger individuals that are training for almost whatever sport.
Sure.
We usually start off with some type of warm up, maybe a static stretch. And as I start to learn more about the athlete, then especially if they have some particular thing that is very tight on them, we need to make sure we get that stretched out. And then we mobilize. Mobilization meaning that we take and express that joint through its fullest range of motion, be it hip, knee, shoulder. And then, so you start off with static stretching, mobilization, okay? And that mobilization tends to warm you up, get your heart rate up a little bit. And then what I have people work into for their first, I'm not a big fan of sitting around not doing anything. Some trainers, maybe you do kind of one exercise and hang out for a little bit. I get kind of bored with that. It's kind of boring for the other person. So I tend to superset a lot of my clients, one exercise and another. And so my first superset, I'll have them do explosive things, be that plyometrics, be that Olympic style lifting, things that are very short time under tension and fast and explosive, okay, that require fast twitch muscle fibers. Then from there, we tend to move into a couple different resistance training exercises, focusing on upper body and lower body. So one lower body and one upper body superset back and forth so that those muscle groups don't interfere with each other. And they're big compound movements, chin ups, squats of some sort. And then I make sure that I intermix appropriately bilateral and unilateral work, meaning, one week if we've done, and unilateral meaning, so one side independent of the other one. So like walking lunges or something like that,
Mhm.
right? And so mixing that appropriately so that they are getting that, say if they're doing a walking lunge, that, frontal plane stabilization of that knee, right? Just like when you're skating, you're not skating with both feet together. It's push, 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 push.
Yep.
And then from there, we start breaking it down into different planes of motion as well. Because you've got sagittal plane exercises, transverse plane exercises, frontal plane. And most of this stuff starts sounding like very complicated to people. So what I do, I put them through the workout. I write down exactly here's what we do, boom, boom, boom. Here's your weight, boom, boom, boom. And then they'll oftentimes go and replicate that on themselves. Maybe I usually like them to do, depending on where they're at in their training. But off season, if you can get that in a couple for 3 times a week, that's great. It's a full body workout, so you should be minimally sore from that, as opposed to like a traditional bodybuilding hypertrophy workout where you're doing 120, 130 reps on one body group, chest and back and all that stuff.
Mhm.
It should be, fairly not sore because we're distributing that load over the entire body. And
When
then towards the end of the workout, I love to do spinal stabilization stuff. So, people think of core work is like, let's do a bunch of crunches, but really, the core is a stabilizer of the spine, and then it is a force producer and the connector between legs and upper body. So things like cable twists, things like single arm wall ball and med ball throws, stuff where you're using that spine to transfer that energy. And just like in a baseball swing or, taking a shot in hockey,
Yeah,
these
snap
things
shot.
where you have to boom, pop, explode, boxing punches, tennis swings, all this stuff. So
when do you start to
in that aspect, I think pretty much catch in that type of workout every type of thing that you mostly need to do.
when do you find the right time to start bringing weights in for kids when they start wanting to get a workout in? I get that question a lot, and I'm always hesitant to bring weights in for kids because I think
Yeah.
they need a professional to show them how to use them more importantly than win. I'll listen. I'll hang up and listen.
I think calisthenics will do quite a bit of what kids, probably need. I would say once you start getting into puberty, be that 14, 15, 16. I mean, you see guys in football and all that kind of stuff. That's tend to be when they start doing their high school lifting program, things of that nature. Um, but younger kids, I mean, they could do things like kettlebell swings and stuff like that because that's a very short time under tension, right? It's not like you're like struggling to crush that weight. It's explosive. Or you can have them do plyometric jumps, push-ups, even working on out the jungle gym, right? Pull-ups, all that kind of stuff. There's no problem for kids to do, even, and then, cardio routines, right? Just having kids, do shuttle runs and things of that nature or road work. All of those things are fine for kids to do.
Perfect. Well, Blake, this has been awesome. Coach, you got anything else you want to follow up with?
That's been awesome.
I appreciate your time. Sorry for being so late. We had a little snafu before we started. Blake had to wait for us. Well, this has been great. I do want to get back together next time you're in the facility. Let's put something together, and I want to be able to send some people over your way. We always get asked about it. We don't really have a good program set up to where I can stand behind it, so I think that'd be good for us to put something all together.
Yeah, sounds great.
We can push everybody to the right person. All right, Blake. Well, it's been great. Zane,
Thank you.
have a good day. We'll see you.
Bye, guys.
All right, catch you later.
See you, Blake.
Thanks, Blake.